In January 1993, 23-year-old Bonnie Haim vanished from her Jacksonville, Florida home, leaving behind her husband, Michael Haim, and their 3-year-old son, Aaron. Her disappearance remained a mystery for over 2 decades until a remarkable discovery by her son brought long-awaited answers. Bonnie and Michael Haim appeared to lead a typical life of a young couple, and they both worked at a company owned by Michael's aunt. However, beneath the surface, their marriage was troubled. Friends reported that Bonnie was planning to leave Michael and take their son with her. Co-workers reported seeing Michael behaving extremely poorly towards Bonnie, which was corroborated by those who knew of her plans to leave. On the night before her disappearance, the couple had an argument. The following day, Bonnie was gone. Her purse was found in a dumpster at a hotel near Jacksonville International Airport, and her car was discovered in an airport parking lot. At the time, their young son, Aaron, told a child protection team member that he saw his father hurt his mother. Despite this, and the fact that Michael was a prime suspect, authorities lacked sufficient evidence to charge him, and the case went cold. In 2014, Aaron Fraser, who had been adopted by another family and changed his last name, took over his childhood home after winning a wrongful death lawsuit against his biological father. While renovating the property, Aaron made a shocking discovery. A set of human remains were buried in the backyard. Dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to his mother, Bonnie Haim. Following the discovery, Michael Haim was arrested and charged with second-degree slaying. The trial began in April 2019. Prosecutors presented evidence including the remains found on the property and statements from Aaron from when he was a child. In what seemed like it may have been an unfortunate twist, Aaron testified that he had no memory of the night his mother disappeared. However, his statements from when he was 3 were still allowed to be put to the jury, and remember to keep this in mind because it'll be important shortly. Michael Haim took the stand, denying any involvement in his wife's death. After 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury found him guilty of second-degree slaying. The judge subsequently sentenced Michael Haim to life in prison. In 2023, he filed an appeal, claiming ineffective counsel during his trial. The appeal contended that his trial lawyers failed to properly challenge statements made by his then 3-year-old son and did not present certain expert testimonies. As of now, Michael Haim remains incarcerated at Madison Correctional Institution. Anna Marie Hahn's story is a chilling blend of betrayal, greed, and the calculated exploitation of trust. Born in Bavaria in 1906, Hahn became one of America's most notorious female serial perpetrators, preying on elderly men in Cincinnati's German immigrant community during the 1930s. Her crimes, driven by financial desperation and a gambling addiction, left a trail of arsenic-laced deaths and forged wills, culminating in her historic execution in Ohio's electric chair in 1938. Anna Marie Hahn's descent into infamy began long before her arrival in the United States. The youngest of 12 children in a well-off Bavarian family, she faced social ostracization at 19 after giving birth to an illegitimate son. To avoid scandal, her family sent her to Cincinnati in 1929, where she lived with relatives and married Philip Hahn, a German immigrant and telegraph operator. The couple initially ran a bakery, but financial struggles during the Depression pushed Anna toward darker ventures. Notably around this time, it's believed that she started gambling in an effort to turn her fortunes around. By 1932, she abandoned the bakery and reinvented herself as a caregiver for elderly, often isolated German immigrants. This role granted her access to vulnerable men, many of whom had no close family or friends. These men tended to be frugal working-class individuals who built up significant savings over the course of their lives. Hahn's charm and fluency in German endeared her to her charges, But behind her nurturing facade lay a calculated predator. She began poisoning her victims with arsenic, a poison she allegedly purchased under the guise of rat control to inherit their savings, property, or insurance payouts. Hahn's confirmed victims spanned from 1933 to 1937, though suspicions linger that her death toll may have been higher. Her 5 confirmed slayings included the following men. The first was Ernst Koch, who met his end on May 6, 1933. He was a recluse who left Hahn his house in his will shortly before dying of quote-unquote stomach troubles. Albert Parker died in 1936 after Hahn borrowed $1,000 from him just before his death. Jacob Wagner died on June 3, 1937, and left Hahn $17,000 in a forged will, later proven to match her handwriting. George Gesselman died on July 6, 1937, after transferring $15,000 to Hahn. And just to be clear, these aren't inflation-adjusted numbers. Hahn's evil acts in 1937 netted her at least $700,000. George Obendorfer died on August 1, 1937. He was a cobbler who died in Colorado under suspicious circumstances while traveling with Hahn and her son. Hahn's modus operandi was consistent: befriend the victim, manipulate them into altering wills or granting loans, then administer arsenic-laced food or drink. Arsenic symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, and organ failure, mimicked natural ailments, allowing her to evade suspicion initially. Notably, one potential victim narrowly escaped after noticing flies dying from his contaminated beer and forcing Hahn to leave. And just to be clear, this man left out his empty beer mugs, attracting flies, and the death of the flies alerted him that something was seriously off with his beer. Talk about being rescued by your bad habits. The unraveling of Hahn's scheme began with Obendorfer's death in Colorado. Autopsies revealed lethal arsenic levels, prompting authorities to exhume earlier victims and discover similar poisoning. A search of Hahn's home uncovered arsenic, forged prescriptions, and incriminating financial documents. Her husband, Philip, also revealed she had twice tried to insure his life for $20,000. Hahn's trial, which began in October 1937, became a media circus. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: toxicology reports, forged wills, and testimony from survivors. While she was only officially found guilty of the death of Jacob Wagner, this would ultimately be a moot point. But first, I want to briefly touch on why she did it. Hahn's primary motive appears to have been simple financial gain. The Great Depression had devastated her family's finances, and her gambling addiction, reportedly fueled by horse racing, drove her to extreme measures. By preying on elderly men with savings but few social ties, she exploited a system where wills were seldom scrutinized, and arsenic poisoning could be mistaken for natural causes. Psychological theories suggest Hahn lacked empathy, viewing her victims as mere obstacles to wealth. Some have thought that the loss of her well-to-do status that she enjoyed in her childhood made her feel entitled to do whatever was necessary to get back what she felt was rightfully hers. Well, anything other than working for it legitimately. She was drawn in by the allure of fast money through slayings and gambling. And though I'm no psychologist, her ability to maintain a caring persona while administering slow, agonizing deaths points to some serious sociopathic tendencies. Despite appeals, Hahn was executed on December 7, 1938, at Ohio State Penitentiary. On June 22, 1987, 16-year-old Kari Lynn Nixon from Ausable Forks, New York, vanished during a routine errand to a local store. This disappearance would spark a 7-year mystery that ended with the discovery of her remains and a chilling confession. Kari Lynn Nixon was a sophomore at Ausable Valley Central School, known for her involvement in softball, singing, and writing. Described as a typical small-town teenager, She lived with her parents, Gary and Kathy, and three siblings in Au Forks, a quiet hamlet nestled in New York's Adirondack Mountains. On the evening of June 22, 1987, Kari left her home at 9:30 p.m. to purchase groceries for her father at Thomas's Country Store, a 5-minute walk away. She was last seen alive at 10:05 p.m., exchanging greetings with a neighbor just 700 feet from her home. Her disappearance triggered an immediate search involving local volunteers and the authorities. Despite combing a 50-mile radius, no physical evidence surfaced, leaving authorities and her family desperate for answers. Initial theories split between abduction and runaway scenarios, but Kari's close family ties, untouched savings, and lack of preparation pointed to foul play. And yes, this is one of those cases where some of the initial investigators decided that she was a runaway, due to statements she made to friends and in her diary. She described wanting to move away from small-town upstate New York when she graduated from high school. Personally, I suspect that virtually everyone in small towns has ideas of moving to the big city to achieve their dreams after high school. But hey, I'm not a fancy small-town detective, so what do I know? The case gained national prominence after being featured on Unsolved Mysteries in 1989 and 1990. Two bizarre leads dominated the early years of the investigation. In November 1987, an anonymous letter postmarked in Flint, Michigan, claimed Kari was in Utahville, South Carolina. Desperate, her family traveled there and distributed flyers. A local resident, Shirley Canapel, reported speaking to a girl matching Kari's description, who identified herself as Lynn Nixon and claimed to be from New York. Hypnosis sessions with Canapel yielded no concrete details, and the lead dissolved. It's unknown if this woman had any connection to the letter which was sent from Flint, Michigan. Some have speculated that she was an individual who simply wanted to insert herself into a high-profile investigation, but nothing was ever proven. Just as things were sorted out on this weird lead, the case took yet another very strange turn. In 1990, Kari's parents viewed footage of a concert in Los Angeles and believed a girl in the crowd resembled their daughter. The concert was held in the summer of 1989, and investigators who thought she was a runaway also believed that it may actually depict Kari. Two of the band's members, Jonathan and Jordan Knight, publicly appealed for the girl to come forward, which led to a massive boost in visibility to Kari's case. However, the individual was later identified as Lynette Melancon, a California resident unrelated to the case. These false hopes deepened the family's anguish. The case cracked open in 1993 when Robert Anthony Jones, a bank robber serving a 15-year federal sentence, confessed to Kari's death. He did so as part of a plea deal to reduce his wife Teresa's involvement in his crimes. Teresa had served as his getaway driver on bank robberies, and these two idiots kept their young children in the getaway car, apparently as potential cover if they were caught. Jones, a former Au Forks resident, revealed he had abducted Kari while she walked home from the store. His quote-unquote reasoning for this abduction is highly disturbing. Jones claimed that he committed the act because he was upset that his wife Teresa had cheated on him. However, I have to question whether this absolutely disturbed reasoning was simply his attempt to shift some of the moral guilt onto his wife. That said, he only confessed to the crime to reduce his wife's sentence to begin with, so perhaps there's no use trying to deduce the logic of a perpetrator such as this. He drove her to a remote cabin owned by his father in Jay, New York, where he assaulted her and ended her life. He buried her in a shallow grave nearby, later admitting he returned annually with his family for picnics to monitor the site. Notably, Jones was never on the authorities' radar, and had he not confessed to the slaying, and given the remote location of the cabin, it's likely this would never have been solved. In January 1994, authorities exhumed Kari's remains, along with the groceries she had purchased that night. Forensic analysis corroborated Jones's account, proving his involvement. He pleaded guilty to kidnapping, assault, and slaying charges, receiving an 18-year-to-life sentence. Robert Jones has sought parole on every occasion on which he's been eligible, which of course has put Kari's family through significant additional grief. However, his requests for parole have been repeatedly rejected, and given the heinous nature of his crime, I would hope that this continues to be the case. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here with a quick reminder to share this video with your friends and family. Also, if you like my content, I've got two other channels, one which focuses on mysteries and another which focuses on history, so check them out. In 1985, Roger Dean, a 51-year-old resident of Lone Tree, Colorado, was tragically slain in his home. On the morning of November 21, 1985, an armed intruder wearing a ski mask entered the Dean residence. He forced Roger to tie up and blindfold his wife, DJ, before taking Roger to another room. Moments later, to the horror of DJ, she heard shots ringing out. Roger was shot multiple times at point-blank range as he attempted to flee. He collapsed in the driveway and died before help could arrive. The assailant fled the scene, leaving behind the ski mask for unknown reasons. Keep this piece of evidence in mind, because let's just say it's going to be important. From the outset, investigators noted several peculiarities. Roger had twine marks on only one wrist, suggesting he had not been fully restrained. Additionally, while he was wearing contact lenses at the time of his death, his glasses were found upstairs with duct tape over the lenses, implying a staged blindfold. These anomalies led authorities to theorize that Roger might have orchestrated a fake kidnapping, possibly to withdraw $30,000 from his bank account without his wife's knowledge. According to this hypothesis, the robber that Roger hired to play the part may have advised that he wanted a bigger cut of the withdrawal than previously agreed upon. This led to a rapid falling out between the two men, leading to the slaying of Roger. However, this theory was never substantiated, and the case went cold. 5 years after the slaying, in July 1990, DJ received an anonymous letter from someone claiming to be the perpetrator. The writer demanded $100,000 and threatened to harm her daughter, Tammy, if the demands were not met. Over the next few weeks, the extortionist made several threatening phone calls, providing specific details about the events that were not publicly known. Despite the FBI's involvement and attempts to apprehend the caller during a money drop, the extortionist was never identified, and the threats eventually ceased. In the years following the slaying, the ski mask left at the scene was preserved as evidence. Advancements in DNA technology allowed investigators to develop a DNA profile from hairs found on the mask. In 2003, this profile was entered into national databases, but no matches were found. In 2018, with the emergence of genetic genealogy, investigators revisited the case. By 2020, they had identified potential relatives of the suspect through these databases. This led them to Michael Jefferson, who had lived in Colorado at the time of the slaying and had a criminal history in Denver. To confirm Jefferson's involvement, detectives discreetly collected a discarded water bottle he used during a flight. The DNA from the bottle matched the profile obtained from the ski mask. In April 2021, Michael Jefferson, then 64, was arrested in Los Angeles and extradited to Colorado. He was charged with first-degree slaying and kidnapping. In a significant development, Jefferson pleaded guilty to second-degree slaying in connection with Roger Dean's death. He was subsequently sentenced to 32 years in prison. The exact circumstances of why the events that led to Roger's demise occurred are still unknown. The case of Herman Duft and Hans Wilhelm Bassenauer stands out both for its brutality and the swiftness with which justice was served. These two German nationals embarked on a spree in Greece during the early months of 1969, leaving a trail of death and raising questions about their motives and the nature of their crimes. Both born in 1938 in Germany, Hermann Duft hailed from Haim near Frankfurt, while Bassenauer was from Darmstadt. Professionally, they were plumbers. Duft remained single throughout his life, whereas Bassenauer was married and a father to 3 children. Notably, Duft had a stint in the French Foreign Legion during the Algerian War, an experience that might have influenced his later actions. Arriving in Greece by car on February 17, 1969, Duft and Bassenauer posed as your typical tourists. Over the next few weeks, they committed a series of brutal slayings, primarily driven by robbery. Their choice of weapons included a Winchester and a knife. There's little information about the victims in this case, which I believe is due to the fact that Greece was under a military dictatorship at the time this occurred. On March 5, 1969, near Thebes, they attacked a gas station, killing the night watchman and a soldier, while severely injuring another soldier. On March 13, 1969, in Vula, they attacked and ended a Greek-American stockbroker who was in the country on business. On April 7, 1969, they claimed their next victim, a taxi driver. On April 9, 1969, they killed a gas station attendant near Athens during what was initially thought to be a botched robbery. On April 12, 1969, they committed their last offense while on the road from Athens to Patras. They slew a Greek national who had been residing in Germany and was visiting his homeland. After this slaying, they abandoned their vehicle and used the victim's car to return to Athens. The breakthrough in the case came on April 16, 1969. A vigilant individual noticed small specks of blood on a car with German license plates parked outside his residence. This vehicle belonged to the duo's most recent victim. When Duft and Bassenauer arrived to retrieve the car, the police were alerted. Upon questioning, they confessed to their crimes and were subsequently arrested. Notably, given that Greece was under a repressive military dictatorship at the time, some have questioned just how voluntary these confessions were. The trial was conducted at the appeals court, where both men faced charges of slaying, robbery, and related offenses. They were found guilty and received death sentences for each of the 6 acts. Their appeals to the Areopagus Supreme Court and requests for clemency from the Council of Pardons were denied. And remember when I said that justice would be swift in this case? Well, I wasn't kidding. On December 15, 1969, both were executed by firing squad, Bassenauer in Corfu and Duft in Aegina, corresponding to the locations of their respective incarcerations. In the aftermath, Bassenauer's widow remarked that her husband received a just punishment, but expressed discontent over the timing of the execution. According to her, the Greek authorities ought to have waited until after Christmas to carry out the punishment, which is an interesting take to say the least.